One of the things that helps me is those people that I'm intimidated by, I reach out, a lot of them have conversations and help me and guide me and do the thing you're afraid of. Have the conversation that you're afraid of and find out that there was nothing to be afraid of. And you find out that you're not an imposter, that you actually have your shit together, you have value, and bring it out in the world.
You're listening to the Let's Talk Marketing podcast hosted by me, Katya Allison. So what have you gotten yourself into? That is a great question. In short, it is going to be a good time. We're going to have great conversation, and there's going to be a little bit of learning along the way. Through insightful interviews with top marketers, entrepreneurs, and thought leaders, I get to explore the latest trends, techniques, and strategies in the world of marketing. I am here to offer you engaging and informative discussions to help you stay up to date on the latest trends and take your marketing skills to the next level. Now, in this episode, it's going to be a little different. Now, we're covering a topic. I would say a topic that's kind of near and dear to my heart, but not really. And you'll understand why. So we're taking a twist on the normal format. Today, we're going to be talking about imposter syndrome. And we're going to do a little dive into just kind of this mental health check of imposter syndrome. My guest today is Nick Klingensmith. Now, after overcoming addiction and health challenges, Nick found solace in obstacle course racing, completing over 100 Spartan races and 6 major marathons. Drawing from his sales and background, he is now someone who inspires others to conquer their fears and pursue their goals with purpose. I am so excited to be chatting with a guest today. You will hear so much of his just kind of struggles and triumphs, and there's something kind of heartwarming and, it makes you feel okay about knowing that he's also struggling through it, but he gets over it and gets through it. So let's get ready to talk marketing, mental health, sort of, in marketing with Nick Klingensmith. Nick, welcome to the Let's Talk Marketing podcast. I'm really excited to have you on here today.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
So for my listeners, we're doing something a little bit different this time around. Normally we pick a marketing, I don't want to not call you a marketing expert, but normally we dive into a specific strategy. And the reason that I wanted to dive into this is that I think not just as marketers, I think as people or anybody in a business, what we often run into is this feeling of imposter syndrome. And rather than just having side conversations, I thought, let's just bring it to the podcast and deep dive into this a little bit. And then I have you on here so that we can have that conversation. So let's get started with just having you share a little bit about your personal journey that got you to where we are today so that we can give our listeners a little bit of insight on your background.
All right. Absolutely. I'm going to start by sharing a pivotal moment in my life, which was in October of 2016, I was sitting in my office, and this is back when I was a VP of sales for a logistics company here in Florida. And my boss walks into my office and he says, "Hey, I want you to do a Spartan race with me." I looked at him and I think, no, fuck no. 10-mile trail run with obstacles? You're out of your mind. I had no intention of being that uncomfortable. And I went home that night, and then I really reflected upon really the last 11 years prior to that. And in that time, I've had cancer 4 times. I'm a type 1 diabetic. I'm a recovering alcoholic. I have 7 herniated discs from 2 different car accidents, although at that time, only one of the car accidents had happened. Nerve damage. I have sleep apnea. I lost my sister. I lost my mom. I almost died from meningitis. I went all 12 rounds with COVID. I had terrorists put a nerve gas bomb threat on my plane once. I don't know why I throw that one in there. It's just interesting. So about a month before he walked into my office, I had just beaten cancer decisively for the 4th time. And I had everything going for me in my life. I had just been promoted at work. I was dating a girl that's my now wife. I had just beaten cancer decisively for the 4th time. I was feeling good, living good, but I already was uncomfortable. Something was missing. And that's when it occurred to me that through all I had been through, the multiple cancers, through childhood neglect, just the universe pushing down on me, I had not overcome my adversity. I had only survived it. And that's why I needed to take him up on that challenge, because I knew that I needed something in my life. And I had been sober now for 2 years. So I had spent 2 years really stripping away the wreckage, clearing the things that are blocking me from living my life. And I guess now at this point, I was ready. And so I took him up on the offer. The race was 9 weeks away. I thought I was running for one race. I thought I was training for one race. What I didn't realize was that every step was going to lead to another step. To train for the race, I woke up at 5 a.m. to train before work, which was something I never thought possible. I was a guy who woke up like a minute and a half before class. You know what I mean? And I never thought I could be somebody who wakes up early to exercise. I just didn't see that about myself. And by waking up early, I defied everything that I previously believed about myself. And I continued on throughout that journey. And that was 7 years, 97 Spartan races, 6 major marathons, 50 or so other obstacle and endurance events, and all of the life lessons that have come with it.
How does that fit into you being someone that can talk about imposter syndrome? Is it because the initial was, heck no, I'm not going to do that because I don't see myself in it? Because you also just finished describing all of the things that you'd overcome. To me, I would think that a Spartan race of all things would be so minor. But I'd love to hear your take on how that journey fits into being the person that can talk about imposter syndrome.
So that was only the lead up, right? That was only the baseline story. That was like my origin story of how we got into it, because I hadn't overcome anything. I had been a victim. I had a victim mindset the entire time from my childhood. And I'll tell you what, victim mindset, it disguises itself as grit. It disguises itself as resentment. I thought I was tough all these years because I wouldn't feel things, and I was tough with my cancer, and I didn't need people, and I didn't need this. And, when I later found out that it wasn't so much armor, but a prison cell that I was constructing, and poison was on the inside. And so I needed the change to begin my journey. So I hadn't learned the lessons yet. And I'm going to fast forward a little bit, because about 7 months after I started obstacle racing, I had noticed a change in other people. I noticed a way that other people were treating me was differently, and the way they were responding to me was differently. And it was all very positive. And I realized that I all of a sudden was changing, and I liked how I felt. I liked the power I was taking back over my life. I like the lessons. I like the humility, because it's good to suck at something new. I like a new sport where I don't need to walk in thinking I own the place. I was on top of the world. I had literally just celebrated my 3rd sobriety anniversary. I had to do math back then. My 3rd sobriety anniversary. I just had a great training session with my buddy, and I'm driving home, and I pull up to a red light, and that's when it hit me. Literally hit me. A woman who was going full speed down the highway crashed into my Jeep, and she went flipping over several times. I got several more herniated discs from it. I got nerve damage. 12 days later, the woman died. And even though all I was doing was sitting at a red light, the last thing that happened in her life was she connected with me. So that's hard not to carry with you, even a little bit. Later that day, my cat died.
The listeners are going to be like, are you kidding me? Have you made this story up? That's an insane amount of things that continue to pile on and pile on.
We aren't even done yet. And here's the thing, it's perspective too. Because when you start to see everything getting overwhelmed, everything is overwhelming. And that's how I saw it. And so my dad was living in Fort Myers. They just had that horrible hurricane. They had been without power for weeks because he lived in the poor part of Fort Myers. Somebody stole his neighbor's generator. And so he went to go get it back with his neighbor. He ends up pulling a gun on somebody. So my 71-year-old dad, who walks with a cane, was arrested. The world is literally just blowing up around me. And that's how I felt. And I needed to take something back. And I really wanted to race again. But I had this injury I didn't know about yet because I had nerve damage. And so I ended up deciding I wanted to sign up for a race. And there was a distinct moment where I'm standing outside and I'm going to train, and all this stuff is circling around in my head. And I had to make a decision that day that I didn't want to be a victim anymore. I did not want to be a survivor anymore. I needed to thrive. I needed to win. I needed something more purposeful in my life. And I made the decision that day. So that was just one other critical moment. I want to fast forward to a couple of years later here, where I wrote my book, Through the Fire, and the events of Through the Fire end at the end of 2018. 2019, I spent most of the year writing the book. 2020, I spent most of the year revising the book. That was the movie version. That was the version I wanted people to see. But the revising of it, you strip away all this bullshit. You strip away the stuff, the lies that we put out there to defend. And so people don't know that we're an imposter. And as I'm revising it, I was honest with myself. And all of a sudden, I put this vulnerable piece out there. Like there are things in that book I had never spoken about before. I didn't even revise the chapter about my cat dying because I couldn't even read it. I had not talked about my relationship with my mom to anybody until I put it in the book. And so when I put these things out there, just me naked, exposed, and people started coming back to me and sharing their stories and sharing their vulnerabilities. And that's when I began to realize that not only am I not alone, but that I had something to offer people. And I had just a story that I could tell that could help other people. And it's ultimately in the last couple of years now, as I'm reflecting upon these and I'm having these conversations and I'm working on this next book and I'm full blown reflective mode. And I realize now all the times that I've been an imposter, all the things that not been an imposter, felt like one because I carried the sentiment with me. I spent 14 years at one job. All right. I was a VP of sales there. It was my identity. And I remember this is something we had talked about before. And I think a lot of people I was in logistics, but I have a feeling that this is going to apply to the marketing world too, as the logistics industry has become so fragmented and scattered. So many people have gone off to start their own thing. And I understand that's a lot of people in the marketing world too. You work for either a corporate company or a powerhouse company, you go off on your own. My God, David and Goliath, when you're trying to compare yourself to the company you just walked out of. And when that happens, I started having these first doubts, right? Am I good enough to be on my own? Did they just carry me all this time? Was I even that good to begin with? And then it gets worse. It gets resentful and it gets combative. Like I want to beat these people. I want to prove something. I want to whatever and like show them. But that's just poison. It is just poison and unproductive. So I know I just stretched a really big question into one, but the thing that makes me qualified to speak about this is the openness and vulnerability now, and the sheer fact that I can look at the people that I used to work with, the people I used to interact with, and I've come to realize something. The people that are cheering for you are always going to cheer for you. And the people that are against you are always going to be against you. If there are people judging you, waiting for you to fail, fuck them, because they are never going to celebrate you. That's it. They're never going to be on your side. We should never let somebody else define us. And it's easier said than done.
And it's interesting that you say that. We should never let somebody else define us, but imposter syndrome is us. It is that little voice in us, and that we give so much weight to. And it doesn't matter how much experience, and it doesn't matter how many years you have under your belt for something. There is this persona, I think, that feeds into imposter syndrome of what you think, quote unquote, things should be, or you should be, right? Like, I'm a marketing expert. That means I should have 20 years with the same company. That means I should know every aspect of marketing all the way to, like as if I was a T marketer and that was my specialty, right? Like I have that narrative in my head. And you're right. In marketing, it is a very great example. There are a lot of people that have the offshoots because it is an area that you can consult in and act as your own agency. But you're right. There is the David and Goliath feeling of, okay, I don't have all of those resources. Now I'm trying to defend why someone should hire me versus you should hire me, right? It's a nuanced conversation that you're having with yourself, not with everybody. And I don't know if you feel the same way about that as at all. Would love to hear.
Here's why too, is it's comparing. It's comparison is dangerous. Comparison is always bad because if I'm comparing myself to anyone else, so I mean, right now I'm a speaker now and I'm new to the space. Let's say I'm on LinkedIn, right? Any speaker on LinkedIn has 85 different logo. Like they might be in their garage just changing clothes for their speaker reel, but oh my God, it always looks like everybody else has been at the Motivational Speaker Awards every year. And it's the amount of times even when I reached out and introduced myself to you, there's always going to be these thoughts of, oh, she's not going to want to talk to me, or they're not going to want to hear this. I put a comment on LinkedIn the other day, basically that if you're feeling judged, stop judging other people. And if we're feeling like imposters, we're fearful that other people are judging us. So stop looking at them. If I'm going to look at all these other speakers in a way that I'm looking to compare myself to them, I am setting myself up for failure. I'm either going to have one of two things, false bravado, where I'm going to be like, oh, they don't have this, I have that. And I'm going to have this like false bottom ego, or worse, I'm going to feel less than because of something superficial again. And most of the people you reach out to, again, like they'll help you.
Yeah. or they won't. And they never were going to, right? That's the thing.
And they just you won't enter their space. You know what I mean? I've talked to no less than 5,000 people since the end of October. I didn't have a single person say, "What are you doing wasting my time?"
Yeah. Absolutely. I really want this to be actionable and not just us talking about just stop it. Don't listen to that voice, because I think somewhere deep down, I'm going to be very candid. I suffer from imposter syndrome like on a daily basis that I have to talk myself out of all of the time, right? My aim is to get better at that and not to feel like that on a daily basis. And I know that there are some people that know me that they're like, how could you feel that way? And there's this voice in me that's like, how could I not feel this way? So it's one thing to say, just stop telling yourself that. But do you have some like actionable advice or thoughts on like how to even get started on that? Because that voice, the little imposter is small, but the voice is loud and it's really heavy. And if it was as easy as just telling yourself, like you are good enough, then there wouldn't be imposter syndrome. So I'd love to hear how you just started to overcome it. So you had these lightning moments, but it couldn't have been a switch overnight for you. So what are some techniques, some ideas of how we can overcome that little voice?
I'm glad you said it like that too, actionable, because action is what it takes, right? Otherwise, it's kind of like this. Have you ever told someone to calm down when they're overreacting? How does that work out? Calm down. If I could, I would. I'm freaking out over here. So for me, it's like this, okay? I can't shut the brain out, all right? So you have to replace the thoughts. And I will argue to the death with anyone who says that you cannot control your thoughts. You can, it just takes practice, discipline, work. It's a full-time thing. And so it starts with this. For me, it starts with this purpose. What is the alignment? What is what I'm doing? Why am I doing what I'm doing? So for me, my purpose is to overcome every obstacle and inspire others that they can too. That's why I do what I do. Therefore, my ego doesn't play into that. And I will remind myself several times throughout the course of the day as the imposter voice speaks up and I want to say, shut up. I'm literally just saying, hey, it doesn't matter. It's not shut up. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if I'm an imposter. It doesn't matter if I'm sitting at the kiddies table here or if I don't belong. This is what I'm doing. I have a message to help people and it's more important than my ego. So I'm able to just work through it. I don't overcome imposter syndrome. I work through imposter syndrome. That's just one step though. Having the purpose gets me out of bed in the morning. That gets me through the tough conversations. That helps me hit send on a message that I feel like somebody's going to laugh at me for. But number two is then we have to simply accept where we are, right? Part of the reason we feel that imposter syndrome is because you mentioned earlier, we expect that we're supposed to be something different than we are. We're supposed to be so much further ahead. We're supposed to have all these things and all these accreditations and customers and people. No, I'm right here. I have to accept that I've been at this for 2 months. I have to accept that I can't be all things to all people. I have to accept that I can't take every piece of advice that hits my desk every single day because this is where I'm at. I don't have $1 million in the bank to just spread on things. Like this is where I'm at today, which leads me to the next thing of priorities and discipline. Best way to shut the brain off, make a plan and execute the plan. I don't have time to think about imposter syndrome. That's why these things only happen a few seconds at a time, because I literally have a list. When we're done here, I'm going to my list and I'm just doing the next action item on the list. It doesn't mean that we don't evaluate. Doesn't mean these thoughts don't come in later at night when I'm not doing anything, because that's a lot of times. They sneak up at those random times too. Like, you know, you find a quarter on the ground and all of a sudden you're like, oh my God, I'm rich because I don't have any money, because I shouldn't be doing this, because I'm an imposter. You just go down this rabbit hole of like just nonsense. But this leads me to this next thing, which is self-belief. Dream it, visualize it, vision it. Where are we trying to get to? Like anybody who stepped out of their corporate job into an individual type of, you know, role or starting their own thing and things are going to be an overnight success, they kind of deserve what they got going on right now. It's going to take a while and you just have to be okay with that, because I believe 1000% I am going to be massively successful as a speaker and coach. There is no question in my mind. I believe this fully. And that also, because of that self-belief and that purpose driving me, I'm not afraid to be embarrassed. I'm not afraid to fall, because failure needs to be experienced. I'm eager to learn. I've been at this 2 months. It's nice to be in a place where I don't have to know everything for once. And I am the speaker, so I am the subject matter expert because I'm the subject.
This is very true. Very true.
That might be a little easier for me than some in a world like marketing, which is rapidly changing all the time. And there's so many different rabbit holes and silos that you can go down as well. I know you didn't ask this yet, but if I were to offer anybody advice, it would be specificity. Be an expert in one thing.
I think that's great advice. I think it's great advice. And I also think, to your point, from a marketing perspective, as a marketer, because it is so broad, because there's so many things that there's so many moving pieces and now more than ever, right? So I think as a marketer in this business, it's easy to be like, I need to know all of these things. But specificity means that I know enough to know also that I don't know everything. And
Right.
that's okay. Because I also know that for me as a leader and a manager, I can find those people though that fill in those gaps for the things that I don't and be open enough to be educated on them. Tell me why you thought about that. So, like, if I'm looking at just from a marketer's perspective, that's one thing. And then I have my own personal life, right? I think that you can feel like an imposter in so many different aspects. Like there's one in business, and then there's one like, maybe at home you start to feel like an imposter. Maybe I'm not a good enough wife. Maybe I'm not a good enough mother. Oh, good Lord. We could do a whole podcast on like the little me that says that kind of stuff, right? I love this idea of specificity, right? And that you don't have to be all things to all people and being okay with that.
What you just said, though, a moment ago was so powerful. I don't know, but let me find out. As a leader, your job is not to have all the answers, but you have to know how to get the answers. And the leader who is too afraid to say that they don't know, I've had that boss before. They're not a good boss. They're not a leader. They defend their ego. I've been there too. But one thing I think that I've actually been pretty decent at is I'm not afraid to say, I don't know. Let's go find out. If I have an answer and I want you to buy my answer, yeah, I'm going to stand on my soapbox and rain down until I get my way. But if I don't have the answer, I'm not pretending I do. Let's go find out. I say this for anybody. It's something I teach in sales too. If you don't know, say I don't know. It builds trust. It builds credibility. If you lie and you get caught in a lie, you can't take that back. But when you say, I don't know, let me find that out. Tell you what, let's pick this up tomorrow at 11 o'clock. They're going to say yes because they want the information. And then you know the information. And then you are the person that they go to for information because they know that you'll get it and you don't have to spend some bullshit. So I think that not only is a great leadership technique, but also I can't be an imposter when I'm telling you I don't know the answer to something. I can only be an imposter when I'm lying about the answer to something.
I don't know if you would consider this lying. So I'm going to be very interested in hearing your response because there is this old adage, fake it till you make it. So where does fake it till you make it land on the don't lie or just be honest about it? Is it that fake it till you make it means that you trust that enough to know that you'll come back to it? Or is there even a place for that?
There is a slippery slope. And I'm glad you said that because I was in sales, right? With fake it till you make it. When it comes to answering a question, don't ever fake it, ever, period, ever. There's no value in telling something that's not true. And if you get caught, you can't take it back. It's irreparable harm to do that. That said, right, fake it till you make it is when you're walking into that door metaphorically for the first time. And it's funny, I'm going back in sales here to when I was like 22. The fake it till you make it part is I need to act like I've been there before. I need to be confident enough and just trust my training, trust my experience, trust my instincts, whatever's going to happen. And I'm going to say that's the same case for right now. Like we're talking about things that are, some are within my area of expertise and some are not. So I'm not fit. If you ask me a question I don't know the answer to, I'm going to tell you that's not my area of expertise. But when I'm talking, there's a degree of fake it till I make it here. I haven't been doing this for 10 years. So it's a belief in the confidence in yourself and what you do know.
Yes, I couldn't agree more with you on that. I also think we're not fully baked yet. Do you know what I mean? I will know more next week than I did this week. And that's just the truth of the matter. So to think that there's someone that's evaluating me today on what I know today and couldn't possibly learn within a certain period of time would be unfair. I also think those are things that I need to tell my little voice, my little imposter voice that says, you don't know enough, you're not good enough. There's all of these things that feed into it. So I think we're just not fully baked, and having eyes wide open and understanding that has got to be key to it as well too, and kind of the process of not overcoming. Because what did you say?
I didn't overcome it. I got through it.
You went through it, right? And I think you have to continue to go through it. And I think that's so key. Like, I kind of want to bold, highlight, underline literally that, because it's true. It's not something to overcome. Just get comfortable with it and get through it, and then tackle the next thing or the next day. I don't know if there's anything else that you want to add to that.
It comes down to ego. You can't feel like an imposter if you're not worried about defending your ego. And you can't feel like an imposter if you weren't worried about other people's opinions and how it's going to impact your ego. So we talked about work and management. And in the new book I'm writing, I call myself out for some shortcomings. And I talked about how one of the things that made me successful in my career was I was a constant student. I was learning from everyone around me. I learned something new from someone else every day, or it's a bad day. I was always very opinionated, but I didn't think I knew everything. And so I kept learning and I kept acquiring and I kept progressing. And then I stopped. And all of a sudden, I switched to defense. And it was about protecting what I had learned. It was about protecting the status I had built. It was about protecting my ego. And so anything that challenged my thought, you weren't getting an honest answer out of me, that you were getting ego deflection. Because at that point, I wanted you to think I was smarter, better, bigger, more powerful than I was. And so what had helped me to succeed, I wasn't using anymore. And instead, I had just switched to defense, and it was poisonous for me and poisonous to those around me. And I think that is, most people think imposter syndrome and they think about how it makes them feel inside, and it's hard to do your job and you feel that way. Let's think beyond that. And what are the consequences? Because it does impact how you interact, not just with yourself, but with everyone else too. When you believe you're an imposter, how do you think other people are going to view you?
Exactly.
There's only one answer here. If you feel you're an imposter, they're going to see you as an imposter. Nobody else is going to come in and make you feel differently about yourself. Or if they do, it's temporary. It's just ego validation. It's like that new crush. It doesn't replace those feelings. And so we either have to be so confident in ourselves that we can't be taken off that, or we just have to stop caring about validation from others. Easier said than done, but
I think when you have a growth mindset, the goal is to evolve to that, right? Like the 20-year-old me would not have thought that at all. Very different, very ego driven, right? The 30-year-old me started to get a little bit smarter. The 40-year-old me is getting way more comfortable in my skin. So it doesn't feel like an impossible thing, what you're saying, which I think is really key. I wonder, because you've worked so hard on just getting through this and seeing who you are through the eyes that I would say other people already see you in. Do you find that you either, I don't want to say call out people because that sounds very accusatory, but do you find that when you engage with someone that is getting to be defensive, when their ego is making them defensive, is there something that you do to help them get past it and understand, whoa, wait a second, same page?
oh God, no, that's like throwing a grenade and shutting the door.
Yeah, calling them out. Yeah. But I mean, like, do you seek to help people get through that or see it? You're right. It would be hard for anybody to see that.
The thing about the ego is it lies to us. It is that voice. The ego is the one who is giving you that same imposter voice there. The ego tells you that you're the best and you're the worst. It doesn't tell you, hey, you're just doing okay today. Like, you have to be special at everything you do. So when you see someone else in sort of that, I'm just going to call it like frantic ego mess, yeah, no, stay away. Sorry, I don't know how to help that person. And I can only talk from my own experience. When I was in it, the bad guy doesn't know he's the bad guy.
Yeah, I guess you're right.
So I wouldn't have believed you. I would have just said bad things about you, because I would have been like, tell me I have an ego. Look how benevolent and man of the people and nice. And I care about this. And I don't think I'm special and blah, blah, blah. But that's the ego also telling you that. If you're offended by the fact that somebody is telling you that, guess who's offended? Your ego is offended. So the only thing I would be able to do in that sense, I know that if I make comments about the other person, I'm assuming they would react like I would have. That said, what I can do is simply share my experience with myself and what I learned and what was hurting me. I go back to this too, is that the ego prevents you from learning. That's it. That's the biggest thing, is the ego prevents you from learning. And when you don't learn new things, if you're not an imposter now, you will be soon, because the world evolves really fast around us.
Yeah. And it's interesting because you're right. It would be like throwing a grenade in a room and closing the door. But ironically, you answered my question in a totally different way, because all you can do is control the controllables, control yourself. You can control how you articulate something or say, hey, my experience is this. That removes their ego from the conversation as well. And hopefully will get you a little further in that conversation. So you actually answered it without like specific, I would call someone out, because I would not respond at all if someone called me out. But if I felt like someone was in it with me, do you know what I mean? Because I feel like when you confront someone, you're eye to eye, but when someone's with you, you're looking at the same thing and you're side by side.
I've definitely found that being as open as I am and willing to call myself out, if I were talking to someone in a specific situation, I would tell them 10 different ways that I let ego prevent me from being a better leader, and how it affected me, how it affected others, and let them decide. Because again, just calling it ego, it took me a long time to realize what it was. I actually remember a meeting I had, we're talking 5 years ago, with a couple of the managers at the place I used to work at. And we were talking about how our lead gen team needed to pass off certain types of accounts to our enterprise team. And the manager of the lead gen team, whose job it was to do this, was pretty rebellious about it because he had a massive ego when it came to selling. And I don't blame him. Okay. He was a good salesperson. The thing is that the process had nothing to do with sales skill. The enterprise department had 7 different people involved in every deal, like from 5 different departments. It wasn't about skill set. And the 23-year-old kid pounding out the phone can't do it, even with the help of their manager. But what I didn't know is that people had this conversation with that manager like 7 times already. So when I was talking to the group of managers and I mentioned about, guys, the ego aside, there's a reason to do this, he walked away from the meeting because he felt I was attacking him. And it wasn't about him. I put myself in the role of the salesperson and said, I wouldn't want to hand this over because my ego would prevent me from realizing it's not about your sales skill or aptitude. But he literally just stormed off. And I knew right away what it was. So I didn't get mad at him. I went and talked to him later and I go, listen, I was like, let's chat for a second. We boiled it down. And the way that I opened up was by sharing my own vulnerability about things that offend me that weren't about me. And then I looked at him straight and I said, so I have a feeling when I mentioned ego, I think that might have brought up some of those other conversations for you. He was like, yeah, we were able to just talk about it, but it takes one to know one, because I'm like the best at being humble.
If there was a trophy for humbleness, I'd be number 1. Oh my God, I love this. I could probably talk to you for ad nauseum about this, but any last minute thoughts before we end our conversation?
You know what I'm going to say is this: have conversations like this with peers, with subordinates. You know who my favorite go-to circle is when I need information? The people who used to work for me, because they were my lieutenants. They were my sounding board then. Why wouldn't they be now? But one of the things that helps me is those people that I'm intimidated by, I reach out. A lot of them have conversations and help me and guide me and do the thing you're afraid of. Have the conversation that you're afraid of and find out that there was nothing to be afraid of. And you find out that you're not an imposter, that you actually have your shit together, you have value, and bring it out in the world.
I love that. Some great final thoughts. Thank you so much for coming on to the podcast and re-recording, because this is our second time recording it, but re-recording and just really sharing your insights. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. I know I kind of veered us off a little off track of what we normally do, but here's the good news. I still have key takeaways for you. Okay. And I've got 3 of them. The first one for today's episode is imposter syndrome is a personal battle. Now, imposter syndrome is not anything that someone projects onto you, right? It is something you create for yourself. And even knowing that, even as I say this out loud right now, I can still admit that it plagues me at times. I will say you can do with it what you choose. For me, I use it as a driver for self-improvement. It's like I put these little improvement goal lines when I start to really feel it creeping on. That way, at least I'm working on something and it's working with me, not against me. Key takeaway number 2, work through it. Big exclamation point. Okay, so for this one, I will take a quote from Nick, which when he said it, it really it sparked this light bulb, or I guess I should say the light bulb turned on in my head. Imposter syndrome is not something you overcome. The way to really deal with it is to work through it. By looking at it this way, it acknowledges that it's an ongoing nature of battling it and emphasizes the need for this persistent and kind of patience in the process. And honestly, in a way, it removes the fuel from that fire of that feeling. And my final key takeaway, you're going to love this one. This one's get over yourself. Now, I know that sounds like a harsh statement. It just really speaks to the ego. So we chatted a bunch about how the ego is the fuel, speaking of fuel, that feeds the fire of the feeling like an imposter, and how it has kind of the same voice that says you're the best and the worst, and never really tells you that you're going to be doing okay or that you are doing okay. I started the key takeaway with get over yourself, because that's literally what it takes. It's okay to admit that you don't know something. That doesn't make you a fraud, and it doesn't make you no less or that you are any less. It takes an open mind and heart to really admit shortcomings. The sooner you get comfortable with being uncomfortable sometimes, the easier it will be to get to the get through it stage of it. Now, I would love to hear what nuggets of insights you walked away with from today's episode. Subscribe and follow on LinkedIn, YouTube, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts, or better yet, leave me a review. I'm obsessed with them. A special thank you to my podcast producers, the amazing team of Content Allies. Thank you for spending your time with me today. Until next time, may the conversation flow, the laughter linger, and the outlook remain optimistic but grounded in reality. This is Katya, signing off.